The city skyline stretched endlessly outside Nathaniel Carter's office window, a mesmerizing blend of steel and glass that reflected the setting sun. From his penthouse office on the top floor of Carter Designs, he should have felt on top of the world. Yet, as he leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair, the weight of his responsibilities bore down on him. Nathaniel wasn't just an architect, he was a father. And while his multimillion-dollar firm had risen from the ashes of betrayal, his personal life remained a stark contrast to his professional triumphs. His ex-wife, Vanessa, had walked out of their lives 7 years ago, choosing ambition over family, leaving him to raise their daughter, Emma, alone. At only 7 years old, Emma was the light of his life. Her laughter filled the cold spaces of his heart, and her innocent joy reminded him why he fought so hard to build a stable life. Yet, despite his best efforts, he knew something was missing, a maternal presence, the warmth of a mother's love that he could never fully replace. As he sat in his chair, reviewing blueprints for a high-profile, eco-friendly skyscraper, a knock sounded at his office door. He barely had time to respond before Emma peeked in, her golden curls bouncing as she stepped into the room. "Daddy, can I talk to you?" she asked, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Nathaniel immediately set his papers aside, his full attention on her. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She hesitated, her small fingers twisting around the fabric of her bunny's ear. "Do you think Mommy still remembers me?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He had done everything to ensure Emma never felt unloved, but he couldn't control the longing in her heart. He had been truthful with her. Vanessa had chosen a different life, one where they weren't her priority. But how did you explain abandonment to a child without breaking her spirit? "Of course, she does," he answered carefully, forcing a reassuring smile. "You're unforgettable, Emma." She looked up at him with big, hopeful eyes. "I miss her." Nathaniel exhaled slowly. He wanted to erase the pain in her voice, but no amount of wealth or influence could buy back what Vanessa had taken away. "You and I have been so busy lately," he said, reaching for her hand. "How about we take a little break? Just you and me, some father-daughter time. We can go to the zoo, the beach, or even Disneyland if you want." Her face lit up, and for a moment, the sadness disappeared. "Really? Just us?" "Just us," he promised, pulling her into a hug. What he didn't know was that this simple decision, to take a break from work and spend time with his daughter, would set into motion a chain of events that would change both of their lives forever. As Nathaniel drove home that evening, his thoughts drifted to the past. The life he had built with Vanessa, the love he had once believed was unbreakable. It felt like another lifetime, a different version of himself that had been naive enough to think love could conquer all. Vanessa had been his world once. They had started from the ground up together, building Carter Designs into one of the most promising architectural firms in the country. He had loved her with a devotion that, in hindsight, had been almost blind. She had been charming, ambitious, and beautiful, qualities that had drawn him in and, ultimately, destroyed him. He still remembered the day his world crumbled. It had been an ordinary afternoon when he had walked into his office and overheard whispers between Vanessa and his best friend. No, his former best friend, Richard Hastings. The betrayal had unfolded right before his eyes. Richard and Vanessa had been conspiring behind his back, stealing clients, siphoning funds, preparing to break away and form their own firm. And that wasn't the worst part. She had chosen Richard, not just as a business partner, but as a lover. Nathaniel had confronted them, his voice shaking with disbelief, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. He had expected guilt, remorse, maybe even an apology. Instead, Vanessa had looked at him with cold detachment. "I need more than what you can give me, Nathaniel," she had said. "Richard and I are moving forward, and you should do the same." Moving forward. That was easy for her to say when she had taken half of their clients and left him with a shattered reputation. It had taken everything in him not to break, not to let the betrayal consume him. But he had a daughter to think about. So, he rebuilt. From scratch. While Vanessa and Richard basked in their stolen success, Nathaniel worked harder than ever, using his skills, his determination, and his sheer willpower to make Carter Design stronger than it had ever been. He had pioneered eco-friendly architecture, earning accolades and multimillion-dollar projects. His firm had not only survived but thrived. And yet, in all his achievements, there was still one thing money couldn't fix: loneliness. He had poured everything into his work, focusing solely on providing for Emma, ensuring she never felt the weight of their fractured family. But nights were the hardest. When the office lights dimmed, when the world went quiet, he was left with only the echoes of what once was. As he pulled into the driveway of his modern estate, he took a deep breath. He had told Emma they would take a break. Maybe, for once, he needed that too. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she grinned up at him. "I can't wait for our special day tomorrow, Daddy." He brushed a curl from her forehead. "Me neither, sweetheart." Little did he know, tomorrow wouldn't just be an ordinary outing. Tomorrow, fate had other plans. And those plans included a woman named Lily. The morning air was crisp as Nathaniel and Emma stepped out of their car onto the busy sidewalk in front of the city's grand botanical garden. It was one of Emma's favorite places, an oasis of nature tucked away between towering skyscrapers. She loved the butterflies, the koi pond, and the endless stretches of colorful flowers. "Daddy, can we go see the peacocks first?" Emma asked, bouncing on her heels with excitement. Nathaniel chuckled. "Peacocks it is." Hand in hand, they wandered through the garden, Emma's laughter filling the air as she chased butterflies and marveled at the vibrant displays of nature. Nathaniel, for the first time in a long while, felt a rare sense of peace. His world had revolved around work and responsibilities for so long that he had almost forgotten how much joy simple moments like this could bring. But that peace shattered in an instant. One moment, Emma was at his side, twirling in the sunlight. The next, she was gone. Panic surged through Nathaniel like a bolt of lightning. His head whipped around, scanning the crowd. "Emma," he called, his voice sharp with worry. There was no answer. Heart pounding, he pushed through groups of people, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Then, a few feet away, near the park entrance, he spotted her. Relief flooded his chest, but it was quickly followed by confusion. Emma was standing next to a woman dressed in clothes that had seen better days. Faded jeans, a worn-out jacket, and scuffed shoes. Her dark hair was loosely tied back, and her eyes held a wary sadness. Nathaniel strode over, his protective instincts kicking in. "Emma!" "Daddy!" Emma turned, beaming. "This lady saved me." Nathaniel's pulse still hadn't settled. He crouched down to Emma's level. "What happened?" Emma pointed toward the street. "I saw a puppy across the road and wanted to see it, but I didn't see the car coming. She pulled me back just in time." Nathaniel turned his gaze to the woman. "Is that true?" She nodded, her voice soft but firm. "She ran into the road. I barely managed to grab her before the car passed." For a moment, Nathaniel was speechless. The thought of losing Emma made his stomach twist. He turned back to the woman. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I don't even want to think about what could have happened if you weren't here." "It's nothing," she replied quickly, stepping back as if she didn't want to be a bother. "I'm just glad she's safe." Nathaniel's sharp eyes took in her appearance, her clothes, the tired lines on her face, the way she carried herself like someone who had been through too much. Something about her intrigued him. "Can I at least offer you something for your kindness?" he asked, reaching into his wallet. "A meal? Some money?" Her expression stiffened. "I don't want money." That surprised him. "Then what do you want?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. "A job." Nathaniel arched a brow. That was the last thing he expected. "A job?" She nodded. "I don't need charity. I need work. Anything. I'll clean, organize, whatever you need." Nathaniel studied her for a moment. There was no deception in her eyes, only quiet determination. A woman who had clearly been knocked down but refused to stay down. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "She's nice. Can't she work for us?" Nathaniel sighed. He didn't make impulsive decisions, especially when it came to business. But something about this woman, the way she had selflessly saved Emma without asking for anything in return, made him consider it. "What's your name?" he asked. Lily, she said. Lily, he repeated, weighing his options. Against his usual instincts, he made a decision that would alter his path forever. You start Monday, he said. The stunned look in her eyes told him she hadn't expected him to say yes. Thank you, she murmured. Nathaniel nodded, unaware that this single decision would change both their lives in ways neither of them could predict. Lily sat in the break room of Carter Designs, staring at her reflection in the polished surface of the table. It still felt surreal. A week ago, she had been sleeping in shelters, trying to scrape together enough money for her next meal. Now, she was employed by one of the most successful architects in the city. She hadn't expected Nathaniel to agree to hire her. When she had asked, it had been more out of desperation than hope. But here she was, dressed in the professional clothes she had bought with her first paycheck, determined to prove that she belonged. Lily, right? She turned to see a tall, sharply dressed woman standing in the doorway. The woman had striking red hair and an air of authority that suggested she was someone important. Yes, Lily replied, straightening her posture. I'm Haley, Mr. Carter's executive assistant. The woman's smile was professional, but there was something calculating in her gaze. Welcome to Carter Designs. Thank you, Lily said, though she sensed that the welcome wasn't entirely sincere. I have to admit, Haley continued, crossing her arms, it's unusual for Mr. Carter to hire someone with no experience. Lily didn't miss the condescension in her voice. I learn fast, she replied calmly. Haley's smile didn't falter. Well, let's hope so. He has high standards, and I'd hate to see you disappoint him. Lily didn't respond. She had dealt with people like Haley before, people who measured worth by status and wealth. But Lily had learned a long time ago that resilience mattered more than privilege. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into her work. She arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed every lesson she could. Though she had no formal training, she was resourceful and quick on her feet, proving herself as a valuable asset to the company. And then there was Emma. The little girl had taken an instant liking to Lily, seeking her out whenever she visited the office. They would chat over lunch, sharing silly stories, and Lily found herself growing attached. But not everyone was happy about her presence. Haley's subtle hostility grew. She began making Lily's tasks more difficult, setting her up to fail. It wasn't long before Lily realized what was happening. Haley wanted her gone. But why? And then, one day, something happened that made it clear. Haley wasn't just trying to get rid of her. She wanted to destroy her. A missing payment, a falsified report, and a shocking accusation of theft. Haley had set a trap, and Nathaniel Carter would be forced to choose who to believe. Nathaniel sat at his desk, deep in thought, when his office door burst open. Haley entered, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a look of righteous indignation on her face. We have a problem, she announced. Nathaniel sighed, rubbing his temples. What is it now? It's about Lily. At the mention of her name, he immediately straightened. What about her? Haley placed a file on his desk and slid it toward him. I caught her tampering with the company's accounts. Several $1,000s are missing. When I checked the logs, it all traced back to her login credentials. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. That's a serious accusation, Haley. Are you sure? See for yourself, she said, tapping the file. I double-checked everything. The numbers don't lie. Nathaniel flipped through the documents, his expression unreadable. The evidence was damning. Transactions, timestamps, all pointing to Lily. Where is she? He asked. I had security escort her out, Haley said smugly. I didn't think it was appropriate for a thief to be wandering around the office. Nathaniel's eyes snapped up. You did what? Haley faltered slightly. I thought. You don't have the authority to fire my employees, Haley, he said coldly. Bring her to my office. Now. Haley hesitated, then nodded stiffly and left. Minutes later, Lily walked in. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes burned with quiet defiance. Sit down, Nathaniel instructed. She did, meeting his gaze without flinching. I didn't do this. Nathaniel studied her. The evidence suggests otherwise. Lily's hands clenched in her lap. I don't care what the evidence says. I would never steal from you. You expect me to believe that? Yes, she said without hesitation. I know you don't have any reason to trust me, but I swear on everything I have left, I didn't do this. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, watching her closely. He wanted to believe her. Something inside him told him she was telling the truth. Give me some time, he finally said. I'll look into this myself. Lily nodded, though doubt flickered in her eyes. Thank you. After she left, Nathaniel called in his IT specialist, demanding a full audit of the system. Hours later, the results were in, and what he found made his blood boil. Haley had fabricated the entire thing. She had accessed Lily's credentials, altered the records, and tried to frame her. Nathaniel wasted no time. The next morning, Haley strutted into the office as if nothing had happened. But the moment she saw Nathaniel standing by her desk, arms crossed, she froze. You, he said coldly, are fired. Her eyes widened. What? Nathaniel tossed a folder onto her desk, the audit results. I know what you did. You framed Lily. And now you're done. Haley's face turned ghostly pale. Nathaniel, please, Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared at his signal, and Haley, realizing there was no way out, let out a strangled sob as they led her away. When Nathaniel returned to his office, he found Lily standing outside, waiting. It was her, wasn't it? She asked quietly. Yes. She exhaled sharply, relief washing over her face. I told you I was innocent. Nathaniel nodded. You did. For the first time, a small smile tugged at his lips. Looks like I owe you an apology. Lily smirked. Yes, you do. But I'll settle for dinner instead. Nathaniel chuckled. Deal. Little did they know, their connection was only beginning to deepen. A week later, Nathaniel was working late when his assistant knocked on his office door. Sir, you have an invitation. Put it on my desk. She hesitated. You might want to see this one now. Frowning, Nathaniel reached for the envelope. His name was embossed in gold, the sender's name making his stomach churn. Tiffany and Albert request the pleasure of your company at their wedding. Nathaniel's grip tightened around the card. His ex-wife, the woman who had torn his life apart, wanted him to attend her wedding? His first instinct was to tear the invitation in half and toss it in the trash. But then, he saw a note scribbled at the bottom. A very important investor will be in attendance, one who has been looking for new business partners. This could be a game-changer for you, Nathaniel. Nathaniel stared at the note. Tiffany had no doubt invited him out of arrogance, expecting him to still be bitter and broken over her betrayal. But if attending meant securing a lucrative partnership for his firm, maybe it was worth the aggravation. Still, there was no way he was walking into that wedding alone. His eyes drifted to the office down the hall, where Lily was sorting through paperwork. Before he could rethink his decision, he stood up and walked over. Lily. She looked up, surprised. Yes? He handed her the invitation. She read it, her brows furrowing. You're going to your ex-wife's wedding? Apparently, he muttered. And I need a date. She blinked. You're asking me? You're the only person I trust to make this bearable. Lily studied him for a moment, a slow smirk forming on her lips. All right, I'll go, but under one condition. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. What's that? She leaned in slightly, amusement dancing in her eyes. If we're going, we're making an entrance. Nathaniel chuckled. Oh, I wouldn't have it any other way. Neither of them realized just how much of an impact that night would have on their lives. The game was about to change. The day of the wedding arrived, and the grand event was held at the most opulent hotel in the city. Tiffany and Albert had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers, an endless stretch of white roses, and a sea of guests dressed in their finest attire. Everything screamed wealth and power, a spectacle designed to impress. But the real show was about to begin. The grand double doors of the ballroom swung open, and all heads turned toward the entrance. Nathaniel stepped inside, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, exuding an aura of quiet dominance. But it wasn't just his presence that caught everyone's attention. It was the woman by his side. Lily. She wore an emerald green gown, sleek and form-fitting, with a slit that ran just high enough to turn heads. Her auburn hair cascaded in soft waves, and her makeup was understated but stunning. She didn't just look beautiful, she looked powerful. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The whispers followed immediately. Who is she? Is that Nathaniel Caldwell's date? She's breathtaking. At the front of the room, Tiffany stood frozen, her champagne flute trembling in her grip. She had expected Nathaniel to come alone, to still be bitter, to still be the man she had left behind. Instead, he looked better than ever, and, worst of all, he looked happy. Albert, standing beside her, shifted uncomfortably. Nathaniel met Tiffany's gaze and, with an air of supreme indifference, led Lily forward. He bent slightly, whispering to her, "You're stealing the show." Lily smirked. Wasn't that the plan? As they walked deeper into the crowd, Tiffany could no longer contain herself. She stormed toward them, her expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "You came," she said through clenched teeth. Nathaniel arched a brow. "You invited me." Her eyes flicked to Lily. "And who is she?" Lily extended her hand gracefully, her expression one of polite amusement. "Lily Sinclair, Nathaniel's fiancée." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Tiffany's face went pale. "Fiancée?" Nathaniel didn't correct the lie. Instead, he slipped an arm around Lily's waist and pulled her close. "I didn't think I needed to inform you of my personal life, but since you're so interested, yes, we're engaged." Tiffany's nails dug into her palm. "Excuse me," Albert cut in, clearing his throat. "We should get back to our guests." Tiffany turned to him sharply. "You knew about this?" Albert hesitated, then shook his head. "No, Of course he didn't," Nathaniel said smoothly. "I don't go around broadcasting my happiness." He turned to Lily. "Shall we?" Lily, playing along, smiled sweetly. "Of course, darling." Together, they walked off, leaving Tiffany seething and Albert looking more uncomfortable by the second. Nathaniel couldn't deny it. This was turning out to be far more entertaining than he had expected. As the evening progressed, Nathaniel and Lily moved effortlessly through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with influential guests, including the Chinese investor Nathaniel had hoped to meet. Everything was going according to plan, until a quiet voice called out behind them. "Lily!" She turned, and her breath caught. An elderly man, his hair silver and his eyes weary but warm, stood before her. His hands trembled as he reached out slightly, as if afraid she would disappear. Lily frowned. "Do I know you?" The man swallowed, emotion thick in his voice. "You don't remember me, but I know you." Nathaniel tensed beside her, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Who are you?" "My name is Paul Sinclair," the man said softly, "and I'm Lily's father." Lily's heart nearly stopped. The world around her blurred as she tried to process his words. "My father," she whispered. Paul nodded, his eyes filling with unshed tears. "I've been looking for you for years, ever since I discovered the truth. You were taken from me when you were just a child." Nathaniel placed a protective hand on Lily's back, steadying her. "Taken?" Paul exhaled shakily. "You had a twin sister. Her name was Nora. His voice broke. She passed away when she was 4. I was told you had died as well. But years later, I found out the truth. Someone had taken you and erased all records of your existence." Lily's throat tightened. A twin sister? A stolen past? Memories, or fragments of them, suddenly surfaced. Flashes of another girl's laughter, a hand gripping hers tightly before everything faded into darkness. She shook her head. This doesn't make sense." "I have proof," Paul said quickly, pulling out a worn envelope. "DNA tests. Documents. I know it's a lot, but please, Lily, just give me a chance to explain." Lily felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. She had spent years believing she was alone, that she had no real family left. And now, standing before her, was a man claiming to be her father. A father who had never stopped searching. Nathaniel's grip on her waist tightened slightly, grounding her. "Lily," he murmured, his voice calm but firm, "you don't have to make any decisions right now." She turned to him, her eyes full of turmoil. Paul took a hesitant step forward. "I don't expect you to believe me right away. But please, just let me tell you everything. Lily swallowed hard, her heart pounding. A past she never knew existed was unraveling before her eyes, and she had no idea what to do next. Lily sat in a quiet corner of the lavish ballroom, her hands trembling as she stared at the envelope Paul had given her. Inside were documents, DNA results, hospital records, old photographs, evidence that she was never meant to be alone in this world, that she had a family, a sister, a father who had never stopped searching. But why now? Why here? Nathaniel crouched beside her, his expression unreadable but his presence grounding. You don't have to open it now, he said gently. Lily swallowed hard, clutching the envelope tighter. What if he's telling the truth? Her voice was barely above a whisper. What if I've spent my whole life not knowing who I really am? Nathaniel reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Then you'll figure it out. You don't have to do it alone. A wave of emotions crashed over her. Fear, hope, confusion. But before she could respond, a loud crash echoed through the ballroom. Gasps rang out. Nathaniel turned sharply, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on the source of the commotion. Tiffany, drunk and furious. She had overturned a tray of champagne flutes, her usually perfect composure now unraveling before everyone. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild as she staggered toward them. You think you can just show up here with her? She slurred, pointing a shaky finger at Lily. Parade her around like some trophy? Nathaniel straightened, his voice cold. You're making a scene. I don't care. Tiffany snapped, her voice high-pitched with hysteria. You were supposed to suffer, Nathaniel. You were supposed to be miserable after I left. Her chest heaved. But look at you. Thriving. Happy. And with her? Lily stood slowly, her own patience wearing thin. I don't know what your problem is, Tiffany, but… Shut up, Tiffany screamed. You don't belong here. And then, in a blur of motion, she grabbed a bottle of champagne from a passing waiter and hurled it straight at Lily. Nathaniel moved instantly, pulling Lily out of the way. The bottle crashed onto the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Security rushed forward, but Tiffany spun on her heel, shoving past the stunned guests and bolting toward the exit. Nathaniel swore under his breath. Then, a scream, and everything changed. Joyce. Nathaniel's blood turned to ice. Across the ballroom, near the grand entrance, little Joyce stood frozen in fear as Tiffany, drunk, unstable, and furious, climbed into her car. Nathaniel's heart slammed against his ribs as he saw the car lurch forward. Tiffany wasn't just trying to leave. She wasn't thinking at all. She was heading straight for Joyce. Everything happened in slow motion. Lily moved before anyone else could react. Without a second thought, she sprinted toward Joyce, shoving the little girl out of the way just as Tiffany's car skidded out of control. A sickening thud. Lily's body hit the pavement. Screams filled the air. Nathaniel's world stopped. Lily! Tiffany's car screeched to a halt several feet away, the front bumper dented. She looked around, dazed, before realizing what had happened. And then she did the unthinkable. She floored the gas pedal. The tires screeched as the car sped away into the night, leaving chaos in her wake. Nathaniel didn't care. He fell to his knees beside Lily, his hands shaking as he cradled her. Blood stained the fabric of her gown, a deep red against the emerald green. Her eyes fluttered open, her breath shallow. Nathaniel. Shua, he whispered, his voice raw with panic. You're going to be fine. Just hold on. The sound of approaching sirens barely registered in his mind. Nothing mattered except the woman in his arms. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, and the steady beeping of a heart monitor was the only sound breaking the silence. Nathaniel sat in the hospital room, his hands clasped together, his gaze never leaving Lily's still form. She had been unconscious for hours. He had never felt so powerless. Joyce was safe. That was the only relief he had. But it had come at too high a price. Lily had taken the hit that was meant for his daughter, and he had never been more terrified in his life. A soft rustling made him jolt. Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Nathaniel was beside her in an instant. Lily? She blinked slowly, taking in her surroundings before looking at him. "Did I die?" she mumbled weakly. His breath caught in his throat, a half-choked laugh escaping. "Not even close." She tried to sit up, wincing. "That's disappointing." Nathaniel exhaled shakily, pressing his forehead against hers. "Don't ever do that again." A small smile played on her lips. "You're welcome." Emotion tightened his throat. "You saved Joyce," he whispered. "You saved my daughter, Lily." Her eyes softened. "She means everything to you." "You do too," he admitted, his voice rough. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but before she could respond, the door opened. Paul stepped inside, looking hesitant. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. "Lily." She tensed slightly. Nathaniel gave her a questioning look. "Do you want me to stay?" Lily hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Paul approached her bedside. "I thought I lost you again." His voice cracked. "When I saw you lying there, he swallowed hard. "I can't lose you, Lily." She exhaled shakily, glancing at the envelope on the bedside table, the one she still hadn't opened. Paul noticed. "You don't have to believe me right away, but everything you need to know is in there." She looked down, her fingers brushing the paper lightly. Nathaniel squeezed her hand. Paul took a deep breath. "I know this is a lot, but I want you to come home with me. I want to give you the life that was stolen from you." Silence filled the room. Finally, Lily looked up, meeting his gaze. "I already have a home," she said softly. Paul's face fell. "Lily, I spent my whole life alone," she continued. "I built something for myself, and just when I thought I had nothing left, I found Nathaniel. I found Joyce. I belonged somewhere for the first time in my life." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not leaving them." Paul swallowed hard, his expression torn between sorrow and understanding. Nathaniel remained silent, but his grip on Lily's hand tightened. Finally, Paul nodded. "If this is what makes you happy, then I won't stand in your way." Lily's throat tightened. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was making the right choice. Nathaniel lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss against her knuckles. "You're staying," he murmured. She smiled weakly. "I'm staying." And despite the chaos, despite everything they had been through, Nathaniel knew that this was just the beginning. Tiffany had vanished. After the accident, after nearly killing a child in her drunken state and fleeing the scene, she had gone into hiding. But the world had a way of catching up with people like her. Nathaniel sat in his office, fingers steepled, as he listened to the private investigator's report over the phone. "She's burned through most of her money," the investigator said. "Albert kicked her out. She's been bouncing between hotels, maxing out her credit cards. No one wants anything to do with her." Nathaniel exhaled slowly, feeling no satisfaction, just a grim inevitability. "And the police? They've issued a warrant for her arrest. Reckless endangerment. Hit and run. But she's slippery." Nathaniel glanced out the window, his mind miles away. Tiffany was unraveling, and this time, no one was going to save her. That evening, Joyce curled up in Lily's lap, listening to her read a bedtime story. She had been shaken after the accident, but children had a way of recovering faster than adults. With Lily by her side, Joyce had found comfort again. As Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, watching them, warmth spread through his chest. "Again?" Joyce asked sleepily when Lily reached the end of the story. Lily chuckled, running a hand through the little girl's hair. "It's the third time, my love. You need sleep." Nathaniel stepped in, scooping Joyce into his arms. "Time for bed, princess." Joyce yawned and rested her head against his shoulder. "I love you, Daddy." His heart clenched. "I love you too, sweetheart." As he tucked her in and switched off the lamp, he turned to Lily, who was still sitting on the edge of the bed, watching them with quiet affection. "You're really staying," he murmured. Lily smiled. "I am." Nathaniel bent down, brushing a kiss against her forehead. "Then I think it's time we start talking about forever." But forever had to wait. The next night, as Lily was finishing up some paperwork at home, the security alarm blared. Nathaniel, who had been in his study, bolted out immediately. "Stay here," he told Lily before striding toward the front entrance. A shadow moved by the door. Nathaniel's eyes darkened. Tiffany. She was disheveled, her once pristine appearance ruined by exhaustion and desperation. Her mascara was smudged, her designer coat torn. She clutched a bottle of wine in one hand and a crumpled photo of Joyce in the other. "You stole everything from me," she spat, swaying slightly. Nathaniel's patience was razor-thin. "Go home, Tiffany." "I don't have a home," she shrieked. "Albert left me. Everyone left me. And you have everything. You have her," she sneered at Lily, who had appeared behind him. "And my daughter? She was never yours," Nathaniel cut in coldly. "You walked away." Tiffany's face twisted in rage. "I want her back." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "You're drunk. You're trespassing. If you don't leave now, I'll have you arrested." Tiffany let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, please, Nathaniel. You won't do that. You were in love with me once." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, he took out his phone and dialed. The color drained from Tiffany's face as she heard the call connect. "Yes," Nathaniel said to the officer on the line. "I need someone picked up for trespassing. Her name is Tiffany Monroe." Tiffany staggered back, the reality sinking in. "No, you wouldn't." Nathaniel's voice was quiet, firm. "I already did." The flashing blue and red lights reflected against the walls as sirens blared outside. Tiffany's last shred of power was gone. She collapsed onto her knees as the officers approached. "Nathaniel," she whimpered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please." But he had nothing left to say to her. She was escorted away, and as the door shut behind her, silence filled the house. Lily exhaled, shaking her head. "She's never going to change, is she?" Nathaniel turned to her, brushing a hand over her cheek. "No." Lily sighed. "Then let's stop looking back." Nathaniel pulled her close. "Let's." Because Tiffany was the past, and they had a future waiting for them. It was a beautiful day. The sun cast golden light over the lush green gardens of the estate. Soft music played, laughter echoed, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Joyce ran through the crowd, her dress twirling as she giggled. "Mommy, look!" she called excitedly, holding up a handful of flower petals. Lily smiled. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Joyce beamed before running off again. Nathaniel appeared beside Lily, his hands sliding around her waist. "You know she's been calling you that more and more often." Lily turned to him, arching a brow. "And?" He smirked. "I love it." Her heart skipped a beat. "So do I." Nathaniel reached into his pocket, his fingers curling around something small and velvet. He took a deep breath. "I never expected you to walk into my life the way you did," he said. "And I sure as hell didn't expect to fall in love with you." Lily's breath caught. "But you're here. And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me and Joyce." He slowly sank to one knee. Lily gasped. Nathaniel opened the box, revealing a stunning ring. "I don't want to waste another second." "Lily, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder. "Yes." Nathaniel slipped the ring onto her finger, standing and pulling her into a deep, lingering kiss. The guests cheered. Joyce clapped. Paul watched from a distance, his heart heavy but proud. His daughter had found a family, one that truly loved her. And for the first time in his life, Nathaniel Caldwell knew what it meant to have everything. Not money, not success, but love. And that was all that mattered. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this incredible journey. Your support means the world, and we're so grateful you've spent this time with us. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date with all our latest videos. Share this with your friends and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about the story. Until next time, take care and keep following your heart.